Thank you everyone for being here. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's roundtable on unlocking insights, how to collect and transform large volumes of data to successfully build a new data product. This roundtable is brought to you by Renewed in conjunction with Merit Data and Technology. My name is Sue Stevens and I'm the Executive Director for Renewed Europe, and I'll be moderating today's event. Please keep yourself on mute to minimize background noise. Do turn your videos on if you can. It makes a big difference to see people's faces. And please put your name and company in your box so we know who's asking questions when it comes to it. If you have any questions for today's speakers, you can submit them throughout the presentation and at the end during the Q&A session by using the chat function. After the presentation, you'll have access to the recording and we'll send you the email with the link once that's available online. I've put a link in the chat for details on each of our panelists if you want to find out more about them. On today's session, I'd like to introduce you to our host, Con Conlon. Con is the founder and managing director of Merit Data and Technology. Merit is a data intelligence company headquartered in the Shard, London. For over 15 years, they've helped businesses unleash untapped potential with bespoke and compliant data solutions. These solutions range from large-scale digital engineering to data operations and AI-driven data products. So moving swiftly on, I'll let Con say a bit more and introduce our other panelists to you. So Con, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon or this evening, depending on which part of the world you're in. I'm currently in Chennai in South India. As Sue said, I'm the founder and managing director of Merit Group. And we basically, we're an AI-driven tech business, but we specialize in data collection, data transformation, and data engineering. And I think we've helped people to build data products in about 12 different industries. So everything from maritime, automotive, healthcare, financial services. We've done data products in metals and mining, construction, public sector content. So quite a wide spread of experience here at Merit and lots of different industries, lots of different types of products. So I'll ask the rest of my panelists to introduce themselves. And Andy, I'll start with you if you want to say a little bit about yourself, and then I'll ask you.
Thanks, Con. So I've been in B2B subscriptions since 2001 at companies like Data Monitor, then Informa, and Procurement Leaders, across disciplines including new business, account management, licensing. And I founded Subscribe in 2018 because I felt that there was no watering hole for people focused on highly valuable subscriptions and memberships. And I felt that there was a need to connect with the customers of those companies and to align cross-functional teams. That felt like the missing link. Most recently, I've been evolving Subscribe into producing data-driven innovation to unlock net revenue retention. So that's probably more than enough, and I'll move on to your next guest.
Thanks, Andy. Alistair, do you want to give us a quick overview?
Hello, everybody. I'm Alistair McClellan. I'm the editor of HSJ. Used to stand for Health Service Journal back in the days when print was a thing. I've been a B2B editor since the late Jurassic Age. And I'm particularly interested in this subject because we're about to celebrate the 10th anniversary of our intelligence service, HSJ Intelligence, which saw us convert ourselves from a pretty standard B2B weekly magazine into a much more successful news and intelligence service.
Thanks, Alistair. We'll come back to explore that a little bit. Ben, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Ben. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new ones as well. I'm the MD of the Global Financial Markets segment at Infopro Digital. That's looking at 3 products in the main, like the main one's Risk.net. The reason probably I'm on this call and why I'm interested in the subject is I wear sort of 2 hats in my role. The first is developing products and making sure that everything evolves for our customer base, and particularly data products. And the second is that I manage the subscription sales and marketing teams. So I'm actually directly responsible for people to sell them as well. So spend a lot of time thinking about how we pitch, how we sell, and how we renew those data products. So that's it for the time being. Thanks, Cole.
Thanks, Ben. John?
Hi, so I'm John Clay, and I'm Data Director for Solera Cap HPI. And now CAP HPI is one of the biggest players in the automotive industry across the UK and Solera globally. And back in the day, we used to do all of our data in printed books, and now all of that is digitized. And if you buy or sell a car in the UK, our data is at the heart of it. And so I'm responsible for all of our teams that produce those data products that we sell out there and then used throughout the industry by finance, insurance, repair industry, you name it, they use it.
Great, thanks, John. And Gladys, my colleague. Gladys, you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thanks, Con. Hi, everyone. I'll keep my introduction brief. I'm Gladys Christopher. I'm the Director of Data and Tech Solutions at Merit. I head the software delivery and tech solutions team at Merit.
Thanks, Gladys. So that's our panel, and clearly we've got some representatives of some really, really strong data businesses, really heavy hitters in their industry, dominant in their industries in a lot of cases. So hopefully we'll get some good learning from the session. I'm going to go back to first principles with the first question and talk about if you're conceiving a data product or thinking about a data product, and Andy, I'm going to direct this to you. You know, what are the main considerations at the outset? Back to first principles, back to basics. You're thinking about this. What should you do from a strategic point of view? What are the do's and don'ts?
So, from my perspective, which is informed by that experience I gave you earlier, but also hyper learning with lots of different brands, I think it's exciting to think about data, isn't it? It's feeling like it would be a great pathway for growth, and that excitement can sometimes mean that people are just get their blinkers on. They just want to get on with stuff. So I think it's incredibly important to really take a step back, think through purpose and the value that you'll be producing for your customer, not your business necessarily. That should be a byproduct. And that could be down to trying to really test and iterate on the job that you'll be hired to do, and actually on the converse of that, fired for not doing. So just being aware along each stage to think, who is this for? Who is it not for? Because typically people will think, well, let's just try and get as many people as possible. Disqualification is important. Secondly, what problem do we believe that this will solve? And then test and iterate on that problem being important enough for the customer base. And then how are we actually going to solve it? And that's obviously then the part of this conversation that will open up to you know, the data side of things. But what that means is if you're thinking about the problems that your customers have, you start to find out more about them rather than you. And I think what I'll tend to see as a symptom of stuff going wrong is if people start pre-selling, they're thinking about features, they're thinking about revenue, they're thinking about the budgets, the P&Ls. They're already kind of locked into this thing as almost as if it exists already. Secondly, I'd be thinking about how the data itself works, not in isolation, but what should happen before your customer sees that data, like during that interaction with it and afterwards. So during the testing side of things, working out how does this fit into a workflow, not just neatly, it magically appears on someone's desk, but actually what happens in their day. But also, where does that data, how does it get transformed and who gets to see it next? And why is that important to their company? And if you can try and get to the point where you're thinking through, okay, let's think about the customer base that it is for and the people in that customer base that will typically be using this as the core user, then you can begin to think about how to activate that usage within the first, let's say, 10 days of subscribing, because all the data points towards the first 10 days as being critical. Anything after that and you'll get churn, and then you wonder why there's an issue with your data platform. So it's those aha moments that are really important to model in. Something you'll hear me say pretty much anytime I'm in a conversation like this is the importance of asking, if you were to use this service now, or actually you are using this service now, how must-have is this? Is critical, because not just for the number, that's of interest if you track it consistently over time, but the follow-on question is, what would we need to do to improve that score, or what would we need to do to keep that score? And that's when you start finding out either product improvements or sometimes really unexpected competitors that are producing stuff that you didn't know about, or things like service improvements. So that must-have question will give you a real perspective from a customer base point of view, not a product feature point of view. The kind of things that I see that get in the way of this, and I've probably already touched on that, is almost the status quo of B2B subscriptions. It feels like it's great to have control and P&Ls and budget lines and all that kind of stuff, but we're hardwired to need to plan and control and budget, and that leads to stuff that, if you think of getting a data product into a customer organization, you've got to think, I think, of it as almost entering into the immune system and working through, how am I going to not get rejected by my customer's immune system? And that's not helped if you've got a CFO or otherwise beating down the door to just get the data out there and sold. The second is there's a tendency to shortcut discovery and testing and iteration because of business as usual. So if you hear words, or you hear yourself saying stuff like, well, we've done so much research already, or our customers have got survey fatigue, or, you know, we just can't reach the target customer that we thought would use this, so we're just going to fill up the interview slots with other people, you're already designing a problem and failure into your data product. And then there's the third bit, which is just happy ears. I think I've heard what I needed to hear, and I think I'm going to just go ahead and build this thing. And those things are really important to try and be aware of and then model out. There's value in knowing if your customer base won't talk to you, or your salespeople can't reach that target customer, or if there are barriers within a customer's organization that you didn't know existed yet. But it's always so tempting to think it's okay, we'll plow on and we'll just deal with it as it comes. So I think that's a lot of experience of stuff that's not gone so well, and also some, I hope, steer towards what can go well.
Yeah, it's really helpful, Andy, because I know you've consulted on a huge number of product launches and advised people, so that's really, really helpful, and getting an awful lot around client dialogue for sure, and visualizing how exactly it's going to land, how exactly it's going to work, be quite precise about that. And the bit you mentioned earlier on about who it's not for, who the product is not for, is kind of unusual. And is that to stop the product becoming too vague or too nebulous? Is that why you mentioned both who your target is and who your target is not?
And just understanding. So when I see stuff that leads to scope creep or feature, just adding the kitchen sink, is because people have said, well, we've done our research and we found out from lots and lots of customers about what they need. And the answer is just one size fits all, fits nobody, you know? So actually understanding and being very, like, tightening the net from the beginning. You can always expand and grow from that, but actually understanding who this is for is really important, I think. And, you know, when I go into teams, it's always telling to me, you know, if I say, who's the customer, you rarely get cross-functional teams that can agree on that, even though they've had the same customer base for years, right? So if you're just designing something that you hope is for everybody, it's already feeling like you're modeling in some failure.
Yeah, that's interesting, but it's not for. And Alistair, I'm going to push this over to you, because on the journey you've had with Wilmington, I think you've gone through that as well, and understanding who that client is. Do you want to pick up a little bit on that? Maybe that, as well as your general experience of going from very traditional publishing into this data and information world, and maybe take us through that transition and what you've learned on that journey. I guess some of it will link with what Andy has just said, right?
So I'm not sure Andy has left me anything to say. It is interesting to hear my experience of the last 10 years spoken back to me by Andy there, because all of those things that Andy's talked about, all those mistakes we made, all those right decisions we made, all of the barriers they were put in front of us, When we launched HSJ Intelligence, we were part of Essential, the Essential Group. When the Essential Group was successful, unlike now, he said, disgruntled shareholder.
I'm going to tell Duncan Painter on you, Alistair.
Oh, well, Duncan and I go, and Duncan was very, very, he played a very important part in the launch of HSJ Intelligence. But to get back to the point, we were one of 10 B2B brands. And they included things like Retail Week and Construction News and Nursing Times, Drapers, big, well-known B2B brands. And we were all challenged with the idea of coming up with I hate the word data, because it is a meaningless word, completely meaningless. But we were all charged with coming up with a data product that would sit alongside our editorial product. And we all had a go at it. And, you know, to be blunt, we were successful and everybody else wasn't. And we got sold for £19 million, and the rest of them got sold for all the brands together got sold for less than that. So what did we do that they didn't do? Well, Andy's talked a lot about the kind of sort of generic mistakes. But what I wanted to talk about, because I just mentioned this one thing because I feel it is particularly pertinent, and I feel that nobody else will say it unless I say it, is there's an expectation that your content teams, or editorial teams, whatever you call them, will embrace this new opportunity that's provided by, you know, the ability to analyze data. And they will think, oh, this is a wonderful thing, and I'll enthusiastically adopt it. Well, why? Most of them who, you know, entered journalism, editorial, they didn't do it to comb through spreadsheets. You've got to think of the motivations of your content team. People will think about a sales team and they'll think about commission structures. They'll think about their marketing teams and they'll think about the bonuses they put together. But time after time after time again, I will see them completely forget or misunderstand the motivations of the content team. We were successful because we focused, amongst other things, including all the things that Andy talked about, on that. And we had a very specific bargain, which was, and so I, as the editor, sort of had it, sort of negotiated it between my bosses and my team. And I said to my team, we're going to ask you to do something which is difficult, something which will get you out of your comfort zone, something which you didn't really train for. But we think it's the best thing to do because we think this is how we will grow the brand. If you do this, I will recruit more of you and I will pay you more. Mm-hmm. And I was absolutely explicit about it. And indeed, I have paid them more, and I have a team now twice the size that I did in 2013, because the model worked. And we doubled our subscription revenues from 2.5 million to 5 million in about 2 years. So the model worked. But it's you just got to think about the motivations of the people you're asking to do something, which can be very difficult. And no, artificial intelligence won't do it for you. It will help. And it's a vital tool. And no, data in itself is of very little value. It's very easy for it to be commoditized. it's the analysis that laid over the top of it. Or even it's as much as we did on HSJ Intelligence. What we say is, see all this data here, all this data, forget it. It's not interesting. Just put it out of your mind. Look at this stuff. And actually, you know, just being somebody who can actually say to somebody that you don't have to worry about that. Just put it out of your mind. This is the stuff. This is the stuff that matters. So sorry for not answering your question directly, Con, but I think I used to do Andy's presentation and go around and tell him about that. He did it much more eloquently than mine and much more updated. But anyway, hopefully that's useful.
Yeah, I think Andy covered off like the customer and what's the customer using the data for, and making sure you're hitting that head on and they're getting that value add from the customer point of view. You raised a good point about teams there, sir, and taking the hard questions and taking the fear maybe and the bull by the horns if teams are worried or nervous, and the AI question, of course, looms in that background as well. But a bit of reassurance and bringing them with you on the journey, because you're right. Oftentimes you're asking them to do different things, and
yes,
and you're right.
On the customer thing, and you're dead right. We said right from the start with building the HSJ Intelligence product, which, as I say, will celebrate its 10-year anniversary on next March, that we would produce something that would delight business development directors of 5 different types of company that were selling into the NHS, and we
very specific.
We would delight them. Remember how everyone used to talk about delighting things?
Yeah, I remember that.
Sort of, I know it's like really, really naughty. So I'm embarrassed to even mention it. We had to choose someone to delight, but we absolutely focused on that, and we thought if we do that, then we've got a sort of guaranteed buyer. And we, as Andy said, we found lots of business developers and says, what do you want us to build? And we built it for them. But we also said, actually, you're asking us for a faster horse. How about a car? So then sometimes we were actually pushing through their perceptions. But anyway, whatever we did, we tried to delight a particular group. And we thought if we did that, then, sales directors will probably find it interesting, marketing managers, public affairs people, etc., etc. And so it's proved.
But you were very, very clear about that particular segment, right? And what I like about that is you're very, very clear about who you were serving it into, and that was kind of what Andy was touching on. Ben, if I can come to you at an InfoPro, and that idea of bringing the teams with you, that's something that we've talked on a previous occasion. You want to tell us a little about the experience at InfoPro and pick up on some of that, maybe stakeholders that we bring with you?
Absolutely, and I do concur with Alistair's point. Actually, it's something that I spent a lot of time thinking about, which is particularly if it's led by the content teams, that you're asking them to do something which they came in to do investigative journalism, and this isn't investigative journalism, so you've got to find a way around that. But yeah, from our point of view, I mean, we've gone from having not many data products to having a reasonable suite in a relatively short space of time. Just to give you some background on the types of products that we've got, we have contributed benchmarking products, we've got regulatory products, we've got what you would term databases where people go in and select their own cut of things, and then we've got sales and prospecting tools as well. And just sort of harking back to Andy's point, every single one of those is developed specifically for a use case and specifically for an audience. So again, just to give examples of the types of audience groups and what we've done, we only ever launch or produce things for 2 specific audience groups for our main product risk. And one group is risk managers, and risk managers live and die by having controls in place for their company, and making sure that they're not an outlier. So we've developed a whole load of different suites of products that do benchmarking. And the point about not trying to do it for everyone, we've launched very specific areas. So things like operational risk first, because they care about very different things than market risk teams. So that sort of having a very clear understanding of use case and audience is really important. And then we've done sales and prospecting tools for our second audience group, which is sales and traders. So all they care about is making money. So how can we make them more money through data services? So in terms of learnings, like there are hundreds of learnings. Some of them have been touched on already. I would say from our point of view, and anyone thinking about launching data products, the research phase is really important. I won't spend too much time on that, but my point there is that you have to get content and some element of commercial teams to do the research together. I think if the danger is if you have it content only, it can be something which is fantastic but not commercial. And if you have commercial only, it's this customer wants X, and you build something and go down a rabbit hole and end up without something that's suitable for everybody. And I say everybody, but you're clearly your selected niche of audience. It's really important to think about structuring data and how you do that. That's one of the first problems that you need to solve, and getting that right very early on it basically influences everything you do from a certain point. Unless you get somewhere where okay, we've made these decisions, now we need to rip up absolutely everything as we're trying to scale. So spending time on the data structure is really, really important. And I think John will talk about that in a bit. Data governance is really, really important. So, one of our products is asking central bankers to share pretty sensitive information with us. And we have a central banking journalist team sat alongside. You have to be very clear about what you are doing and what you're not doing with that data. Otherwise, you're not going to get a contributed service. Regulatory services, there are hundreds of regulatory services around. Understanding again how you can add value to it, or what is your USP, or how you're going to defend it by adding some layer of proprietary data on top. Otherwise, you're going to spend, to Andy's point, a lot of time developing something, and now there's nothing to stop, not even competitors coming along and doing it themselves. With AI and machine learning, you can just clients do it themselves. So you need to think very, very clearly about that. Another area that we've spent a huge amount of time on, and you can make arguments anyway, is how to surface the data. There's a huge amount of visualization tools. And in fact, quite a lot of firms actually just turn around and say, I just want the underlying data. I want to ingest it into my system. I spend all day long looking at numerous systems. I don't want to have to learn another one. I don't want to have to use your platform. With that obviously comes a potential loss of control, but you can mitigate that. So it's quite important to think and spend some time, because everyone will have slightly different views on that, and talking to customers to understand what they want. And then I'd say the final one really is how to market it, how to pitch it, how to measure it, how to renew it. Those things in our experience have been slightly different than what I would term a traditional publishing product. In a much more involved sales process, the ticket price is higher, the measurement needs to be different, the engagement needs to be different. So I'll leave it there, but those really from our point have been some key learnings that we found through the journey.
I think, yeah, I mean, we could probably do a whole other seminar on retention rates and user behavior, Ben, and what people are getting out of the product, and maybe we will do another webinar on that. It's probably worth exploring. I think touch on some of that in our clients, and we see a lot of clients, there's kind of two broad camps. I think there's data products where people are using insight, as Alistair said, layering that on top of the data. So in a way you can kind of forget about the data, but here's the key learnings, here are the key points that are standing out, Mr. Customer, and this is what you really need to digest in your decision making. And those businesses, I think, are quite defendable, as you said, Ben. You've got deep expertise in health or in oil and gas pricing or in shipping credit, where you're taking on the data really underpins very solid analysis, and you get that nice mix. It's quite defendable. There are other businesses where the data is just kind of going through, possibly in John's world, in CAP HPI, where it's driving a whole set of systems and transactions. And in our construction case study, again, it's driving transactions where people want a list of construction projects of a certain value, a certain area, and then they're going to sell into those. So it's more more transaction, probably higher margin, if I'm honest, because you don't have a huge number of expensive people, but maybe more vulnerable unless, again, you're adding in something that's maybe data that's not in the public domain and can help defend it. So you might have a telephone team doing old-fashioned research, and that's fine because maybe they're getting data points and might only be 5 or 6% of your data is coming from that source, but it's unique and it's not very easy for other people to get. So that's a kind of distinction we've seen across our clients. Those that kind of rely heavy on expertise and analysis and all of that across the data, and then others where it's more transaction driven, it's probably higher margin, you're piped in, you're plugged in, you're hard to pull you out, and they can also be very defendable from that point of view. But so John, I'll move on to you if you don't mind, and go slightly more technical, and because Ben has touched on as well around getting the data structure right. Do you want to pick up a little bit on that side of things, that we move more from commercial and marketing and making sure your product fits the market, and just if we can move a bit more technical, and if you could take us through some of your experience on the technical side, John, at CAP HPI.
Sure, and I think there's 3 real key points to this, which I'll take us through. And the first one, just following on from what Ben just said there, really, it's about knowing your data inputs. If we start at the very basic level, to build your product, what are you bringing in? And it might be an array of different third-party data sets. It might be some that you're already creating yourself as a byproduct of other processes that you are doing. And it's important to know these, because if you know what they are and where they're coming from, you can then design how you want to ingest them in the right way. What are the transformation and loading processes you need to do? But importantly, you have a rough idea of what they're capable of. And follow on to my next point there, you can then try to work out what other process do I need to put around this. Very importantly, as part of this as well, you need to understand your data governance, because data governance is really important. And Ben mentioned financial data. Governance covers loads. You've got personal data you might have. If you haven't got that, you've probably got supplier contracts, you've probably got third-party data in. All of these have different rules around what you can and can't do with it. And what you'll find is, as you build a data product, is you suddenly have loads more great ideas of what you want to do with that. And other people in your organization will have great ideas as to what they want to do with that. And some may start doing stuff. Now, if you have a good data governance model, you can limit that, you can stop that. If it happens, you can pull it back quick. If you're weak, it creates a whole host of problems that will give you a massive headache for ages going forwards.
And all your data ends up with OpenAI all of a sudden, and somebody else is monetizing all your hard work.
Yeah, and you just don't want that, do you? That's not what we want. And the second point, really flowing on from this, is you've got your data in, okay, but the second key point is define your quality, because what the output is you want to do come in many different ways. And when you're looking in terms of data, you can choose to differentiate. You could choose to be a cost leader and just churn stuff. If you want to differentiate, though, there's 3 different ways you can really do this with data. It takes the abbreviation of CAT, as I'll call it. So your first one is completeness. Okay, so how complete you want that data to be? You could constantly chase for perfection. We're going back to what we were talking about personas at the start. Do customers need perfection in terms of the completeness of the data? Possibly not. So work out what is the right level of completeness of data that you need. 70% coverage might be absolutely fine. The next one is accuracy. So how accurate does that have to be? Again, if you're working in health and your data's powering operations or medicine, you need to be very accurate. Achieving that level of accuracy comes at a very, very high cost. But if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do, and you can price for that. Most businesses won't need to be at that level. So work out what is acceptable for you. For us in automotive, we actually do have to chase a very high level of accuracy, and we operate at a standard of 5 Sigma in what we do for the finance and insurance business. And then the reason for that is, if we get something wrong, you can imagine someone's buying a car and their price is out, that aggregates across the UK, across the globe, to potentially millions of pounds, warranty, liabilities, a whole host of problems. So we have to chase high levels of accuracy. And the third one is timeliness. So how fast you have to deliver this data. And you can really, again, alter your proposition quite significantly on this, because you might be exactly the same as your competitors across the other 2. But if you can deliver that data sooner, you can unlock more potential into the markets and go into new white space no one else can go into. Or you could go faster with a lower quality product, and it takes customers into that space. So thinking across these 3 aspects are really important, both in terms of what you deliver to customers and also how you design your processes, because your whole processes, your whole data structure technically should all hinge on that, because that is really what you need to do. You can't over design it, and you don't under design with what you want to do. And then the third point really for me, which is really important and supports both of these, and we kind of alluded to this a bit as Alistair and Ben were talking around what they've done in their organizations. But for me, it's around a data culture and data culture throughout the organization. If you want to be a data-driven business, then you need to work with a data culture. And by that, examples of what I mean by that is, do you have data literacy throughout the organization? Do exec who are sponsoring these products know what data actually is? Do you manage your operations by using KPIs and data-driven metrics, which aren't just numbers? They're produced based on insight you've done internally. So as good as what you deliver externally, you should be doing even better internally, because that will improve your outputs and lower your cost base of what you're actually delivering. So really think that through. Make sure you focus on yourself as much as the external focus. And as part of that, I can't stress the importance enough of having someone responsible in the business as data owners. So we talk a lot across industries about product owners, and you might have product owners as well, but a data owner is someone that really owns that data set and is responsible for all of those things I've spoken about there, because they'll go that extra mile of driving that forwards and enhancing that. And in our business, I probably call myself maybe data sponsor. Within each of our product teams that we have, I've got separate data owners, and they're usually operational managers, not someone who's technically software based. No, or not product based. They are based in data operational roles, and they really get it. They understand the industry, they understand the context around the data itself, and understand the context of the customers, and that helps them to put a different spin on it and keep that data evolving and moving forwards.
Yeah, that's really good, John. I love that about the data culture and the ownership, and with our clients where we've seen really strong data owners, and they've really put us to the edge in terms of deliverables. It makes a huge difference, and people are passionate about it. And there are, it can sound a bit odd to say somebody's passionate about data, because data can sometimes be quite a boring topic, but we have clients who are really passionate about their data. They're probably passionate about the clients, to be fair. But on those three things you mentioned, I think in nearly all of our contracts with our customers, accuracy, completeness, timeliness are there every time. Are we getting a complete set of data for our customers? Sometimes richness, you can be complete, like, are we getting all the construction planning applications in the UK, and are we getting a lot of field population? Are we getting sort of 95% of fields populated in, so 98% of those records? And then the timeliness, are we getting it same day? We have that as well. So, and the accuracy, again and again, we come back to that with our customers, and they're always pushing on those correctly for those 3 or 4 points. And you're right, it's a differentiator. It means there's credibility if you're trying to get a premium price against a competitor, because it is very easy to get into a downward spiral of pricing. And I think those companies that can hold their nerve are those where they're absolutely rock solid about their completeness, they're rock solid about the accuracy and the timeliness, and it just gives their sales teams that bit of extra confidence to not discount and not get nervous around a new competitor. If you've got those three things absolutely nailed, I think it brings a lot forward. So I don't know if Andy or Ben or any of you guys want to, or Alistair, if you want to chip in on any of that before I move on to Gladys. But
yeah, it's just making me think of one example where I end up speaking in depth with the customers of B2B subscriptions and data products and what have you around the world. And, sometimes their view of the completeness and accuracy and timeliness is that they're probably good at kind of being aware of the stuff that they know about and the data that's formed. But actually, the edge of their understanding, the edge of what value is understanding what's around the corner, what might be coming next. And so, I've had people respond to certain data, say that's okay, but it feels like it's almost what we've got now. But if you could give me a sense of, even if it's almost like quick and dirty data, but I know that it's quick and dirty data, or I know that it's got low confidence and that might change over time, that will give me an edge, because I'll be able to build that into the way that we're behaving as a company. And that will help me to be more agile, more aware, more potentially innovative. And it's that sort of stuff that I hope it's absolutely reinforcing what John said, but it's the view of completeness and accuracy as the need for the customer that you're talking about.
And some of our customers, Andy, they're really good at seeing other pots of data that weren't on the radar to begin with. And again, the construction one where they found data that wasn't easily available in the public domain, or you have to go to another 40 sources to get them. But really good customers kind of will spot the new pots of data that again will differentiate or allow them to charge a little bit more, or renewal time they can offer. And you're right, sometimes it can be quick and dirty and to begin with, but it's giving something, right? And you develop it. I really like that.
And Andy, I'll just say, like, adding to that, data is about the business as a whole, isn't it? Data isn't its own thing. Data is becoming the bloodstream really of companies as we go forwards. And if we think in that way, a key part which I do and so my team do, we go to industry events all the time. We're at the heart of what's going on in the industry and influencing government, influencing different trade associations to make sure we know what's going on and doing exactly what you're talking about there. I'm thinking 6 months, 12 months out, 24 months out, because we need to be doing that so we can help to make some of that data become available from the original sources and start to anticipate what customers are going to need. And so I totally agree, it's absolutely paramount. You can't just look at what you've got now, you need to be thinking way ahead.
And this is, in a way, this is not rocket science, is it? The bringing together of hard data, numbers, etc., with, I don't like the phrase soft, but soft data or soft intelligence, which is the opinions of people and the decisions they are making. That's the secret of good journalism. It's the secret of good B2B information businesses. And as we develop a world where there's more and more information and more the ability for people to go and get it themselves and collect it themselves or have tools to do it, to me, it's that soft intelligence that our AI masters are at least going to take a few years to be able to do. Marrying that with the hard data offer becomes more. It is the most defendable position, I think, for B2B businesses, because it is the thing that is hardest for low-cost entrants to replicate, or for technology to for clients to basically buy technology that does it for them, which is really why, if I had any wish, I'd just ban the word data. It's intelligence, and that intelligence has a whole range of components, and the best ones include hard data, numbers and things like that, but they also include that soft opinions. Well, this is what the data, here's the data, but what do you think about it? Somebody who's running big organization. And we have seen over the last decade that the world doesn't run on, narrow rails. There are black swans aplenty, and it's that kind of sophistication that people need to think about it, and it sounds like many people are from the conversations we've had so far.
I think they're bringing that value to the table. Gladys, can I turn to you and just talk a bit more technical and about gathering data? If people are at that point, even for a proof of concept or a trial product, as well as maybe something larger scale, where do you start with that, or where should people start? Can you take us through, what's possible, what's not possible around collection to begin with?
Yeah, so at the early stages, while the scraping technologies were developing, collecting data from unstructured PDFs, images, and videos were quite challenging. But as we have advanced and contemporary languages like Python, Golang, and Node.js, combined with the power of AI, we are able to optimize data collection at scale and at speed. And also we are able to collect a wide data from a wide variety of sources. In addition to that, we are also better equipped now to handle the challenges that come with this collection, such as Cloudflare, fingerprinting, CAPTCHA, blocking, and all these things, while strictly adhering to ethical data collection policies. Usually, when we set out to collect data, we generally recommend to our clients to think about the 4 V's, which is volume, velocity, veracity, and variety, because I think someone briefly touched on this. So how much do you want to collect? How frequently do you want to collect it? How quickly you need that data? Because all these things play an important role in determining the price or of your data product. So
I just wanted to pick up on something you touched on there, because the sheer variety of formats you mentioned, Gladys, PDFs, obviously HTML pages, maybe paragraphs of text, video, maybe. There are different formats, but you feel more confident the tool sets are available now for us to get data from those circumstances, certainly better than where they were 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, we've been doing this for 10 or 12 years. But it's more doable now, isn't it? Some of those complex.
Yes.
They're not easy, but doable.
They're not easy. And also, if you look at, there are a lot of no-code, low-code solutions available out there. Some of these are pretty good, and that can give you great results, provided you're just collecting data from websites as is. But once you think about if you want data in a format, in a specific format, or with a specific level of completeness, then I think these solutions might not work.
And I guess at scale also, I think that's a fair point. I mean, we obviously specialize in very bespoke solutions for our customers, but there are pretty good off-the-shelf little scrapers you can use, and either low-code or no-code. But I do think they can sometimes run into trouble when you're kind of operating at a bit of scale, or you're beginning, if you're chasing data even from 40 or 50 sites, never mind 400, 500, I think that we sometimes operate to, but even at 40 or 50 sites, they can come unstuck. And again, the variety of data they'll often struggle with. But for some use cases, if you're sampling something, sometimes those $100 tools can work well. The other place where they struggle, I guess, is transformation. I mean, I think we've learned that collecting data is one challenge. It has its complexities at scale for sure, but really the transformation bit, that, as I say, pulling data from 400 sources, where it's messy and gappy, and distilling it down into one source, that's actually quite tricky, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think there are 3 stages or 3 areas of transformation that we generally face challenges. The first one is data extraction or entity extraction. For example, we have a client who's in the automotive intelligence business. And for this client, we gather data from a manufacturer or OEM brochures, vehicle data. So often you find that in the description, you will find the make, model, trim, door, body type, everything all lumped into a single line. Now, extracting that is, quite challenging. I think earlier we used to use rule-based tools like Gate, and later NLP-based tools like CRF. But now with the advancements that we see in the field of deep learning, let's say with LSTM networks and transformer models, we are able to efficiently handle such challenges. The second area where I think we find we have challenges is the data prep, or the cleansing, standardizing, and normalizing data. And the third area where we find such challenges is mapping the data to client, a customer taxonomy, or the data schema of the clients. So I think these are the areas. But as I said, as AI gains traction, we are relying more and more on fine-tuned transformer-based semantic models. to overcome such challenges. So it's getting easier.
Yeah, I guess spotting duplicates and stuff like that. But then you're right, mapping a piece of raw data from a website or from a source to that exact equivalent record buried in the client's system, that mapping can be quite tricky. But yeah, I guess the machine learning is. I mean, and just anything else on AI, it's all the rage. I mean, I think we'll try to get that balance between being AI skeptics and all the hot air that you have around AI, and being slightly cynical on one side. But I think we really are seeing this shift, Gladys, aren't we? Where it is. I mean, we were using it a long time ago, but I think the shift is pretty genuine, isn't it, in terms of what we're able to do now? And it is.
Absolutely.
I think it's better.
Yeah, I think we are using AI more and more as an enabler. And if you look at, like, the 3 stages of transformation that or the 3 areas that I mentioned, which is, data extraction, or like, data preparation and data mapping, I think we are seeing the use of AI, or at least, like, we are using AI more and more to get us, to become much more efficient. One thing that we have also seen is that, this has now reduced the time that we take to develop a model. Let's say, like, we have seen that it has come down by 50-60%. So the use of AI has, definitely helped us in that aspect. It's also improved the accuracy of the data, to a large extent. And also, if you look at, like, with generative AI, we have moved from, those old conventional machine learning solutions into much more, complex decision-making tools, which mirror a human decision more and more. So, and the other area that AI has significantly helped us is, and as we collect data, it's, large sets of data, I think, is the regulatory, security, and the data privacy and data governance aspects. So I think definitely AI has helped us, and we are seeing that it's just getting better and better.
Right. So not just hot air. Okay. Thanks, Gladys. I'm conscious of time. I know there's been some really interesting dialogue on the chat window. It's probably interesting for people to browse through, and thanks everybody. Thanks, Joanne, for your comments, Julian, Greg as well. So thank you guys for that. I'm not going to go through it all now, just from a time point of view. Joanna Edwards, I don't know if there's any other questions that we want to pick up on that have come through that we should look to.
There's a question that's actually being answered in the chat, but I wonder actually if we bring that through to the conversation. So I think it asked whether there was examples from the panel where the audience is the data source, such as via surveys, and how challenging is that model in terms of the business model ultimately selling back to them. And both Ben and John have responded, but maybe we could just bring that into the discussion. Folks, perhaps Ben and John can answer that.
Sorry, just to say, it's that word data again. At HSJ, our USP is that we talk to the most senior people, the top 300 people or what in the NHS, find out what they're doing. People who control £160 billion budget each year. We're taking that knowledge and we're manifesting it. So of course your audience is always your number one source of data. It's just you've got to broaden your concept of data a bit more.
And I wonder, and John, you picked up on that, is you have to be careful with your source then if they're quite crucial to your offering. Do relations get a bit strained sometimes with your sources, or is there a bit of management needed there?
But if our quality falls, then definitely. So our sources are vehicle manufacturers for a lot of our data, and then we will sell it back to vehicle manufacturers. But the key thing, building on what Alistair says there, we don't sell back data, we sell back value to them, because on their own, what they're trying to do, is limited and it serves their need, but they don't see the bigger picture. They don't have access to the bigger picture. So by us working with all the industry, we can produce that, we can consolidate that information and, deliver a piece of intelligence there that really can be used by them to inform benchmarking, to readjust their product strategies. So it delivers value for them in their individual journeys that they go through. And to me, that's the key thing. If you're doing surveys, then there has to be a reason why you're doing that. And you have to make that clear to yourself and understand where you're actually taking that. Because if you know it's going to deliver some sort of insight, people will buy if it's good.
Yeah, and it's a great example of what Alistair just touched on, where it's not the data, it's the value you're focused on there, right? So even though the data is coming from them, they're looking for you to bring the value. So I think that's a good point. We just have 3 minutes left, so I guess I want to move to kind of key takeaways, and so maybe just one from each of you of our panelists, if we're reflecting on what we had either on the kind of commercial, getting the product fit right, or on the technical side. Ben, do you mind if I start with you? Can you give us sort of one key takeaway?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from my point of view, it's just making sure that you're not sort of working in silos. So Andy and Alistair talked at length about the research process and how important it is being close to customers. But I think it's just really important that you have the right people involved in those conversations, because then you're going to understand what the use cases are. You're going to be able to pitch the product. You're going to be able to price the product. You're going to be able to make sure that it's you're delivering something that is of value to a defined group of people. So that's my very quick takeaway.
And stops them from throwing stones at you later on, Ben. The internal politics will be a lot less, I guess, if you bring it with you. So good. Andy, do you want to your key takeaway?
Well, there's one key takeaway that I'd like to just reinforce based on my learning from it, which is the must-have score question, but that it should be asked by, to Ben's point, people who've got a cross-functional view and not happy ears. But actually, I really like that perspective from John about the CAT way of thinking about things. And, as I build out data for my clients to unlock their net revenue retention, that's something I'd like to bear in mind.
Yeah, great. Okay. Let me see. Alistair, your key takeaway.
Well, we've covered a big range of issues. I suppose there's one thing that I remember from launching HSJ Intelligence, and I try and remember in developing the tool, and that is that you have to be a little bit of I use the word in the way that health journalists are never meant to use, but schizophrenic in the way you approach it, in that you've got to be very confident in the offer that you're making, because often you'll be saying, if your offer's any good, it will be saying, actually, client, I'm going to offer you a service that's going to mean that you're going to have to reorganize your sales teams, or that you're going to have to think about the market in a different way. We're not just going to give you something which just plugs into your machine. We're going to give you something with true value, but that might be a bit challenging for you. It might challenge some of the views that are held within your business, which is why HSJ Intelligence and many of the other intelligence products that are discussed here today are used as validation tools within these businesses. When people are proposing new solutions, new sales teams, etc., they look to these tools as validation. And at the same time as being sort of, robust about your vision and challenging convention, you have to be incredibly humble and, nick everything. We didn't invent anything new at HSJ Intelligence. We were lucky a big part of Essential, and there were lots of like WGSN when it's making lots of money. We went around and we stole the pricing model from someone. We stole the customer service model from someone. We just stole and stole and stole and stole and stole, and basically, avoided having to do all that learning ourselves, because we just stole everything. So have the courage of your convictions, but also realize that there's a great possibility that somebody has already done what you're trying to do, or a bit of it pretty well. And the best way is to go and get that and then build your own version of it.
Okay, good. So, but if well-judged thievery. Thanks, Alistair. Gladys, we'll come to you for your one takeaway. You're muted.
I think the key takeaway, and one that is from my own experience, is that I recommend exploring and using more and more AI solutions, to not be afraid of using those options, and use it as an enabler to accelerate getting good data to your data product, or, in fact, even for, having intelligence, getting intelligence that enhances value.
Yeah. Okay, John, you're the last one. Your key takeaway.
If you're ultimately monetizing data, then that is an asset to you. So treat it as that. Have those asset owners looking after your data and being responsible for them, both in the governance and that evolution. If you do that, you'll have a future ahead as you go forwards.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's Andy's points about all that dialogue with the customers earlier on. I like the completeness, the accuracy, the timeliness aspect, and then layering on top something special, the expertise, preferably that Alistair referenced, and knowledge, and turn the data into intelligence, turn it into insight. For me, are the 2 or 3 big things. So I'm conscious of time. We're a couple of minutes over. Apologies, folks. I know a lot of people have a hard stop on a new call, but thank you very much for joining us. I hope you all found it was interesting. We'll certainly do another couple, and we'll be glad to have you back. I'll hand back to Sue if Sue has any wrap up that she'd like to do. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining in.
Yeah, not much more to say, but just thank you, Con, thank you, Merit, and thank you to our fair panelists, Andy, Ben, Gladys, Alistair, and John. It's been a really, really interesting conversation. Just a reminder that we have recorded this, and we'll put the recording in a link and send it to you when that's ready, so you can share that with colleagues at the office if you'd fancy it. But yeah, thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.